building with us. You know, this Sunday is Easter Sunday. Resurrection Sunday. And I hope that tonight you can experience some of a resurrection for yourself. But I got a scripture for you. Let's go to John 14.
Amen. Let's go.
You know, when I was in college, I wanted to know the way to life. Does anyone want to know the way to life?
Yeah.
I wanted to know the truth. Does anyone want to know the truth?
Yeah.
I got a scripture for you. John 14:6. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I love Jesus. He just lays it out.
Yeah, he does.
You see, so many people tonight need to be in this room.
That's right. Preach, bro.
Because they're searching for the way of life. They're searching for some truth.
Come on, bro.
They might be partying. They might be going to some job. They might be doing something that isn't godly.
Yeah.
And they think that this is the way to life. But really, this is the way to life.
Preach,
it's following Jesus Christ.
Come on,
all answers. Everything in Him, you will know the way to live your life if you follow Jesus.
Amen.
You will know the truth of life if you follow Jesus Christ. You see, you don't have to look any further than this room here tonight. Because what do we got? We got an apologetics seminar. And it's all about the case for Jesus as the Son of God. And so today I want to just proudly welcome you to the Pathfinders Apologetics Seminar of the campus ministry of the DC International Christian Church. Let's go. We're going to have Rez come on up and pray for us.
Rez, come on, bro.
Father, I thank you for today.
Yes, God.
It is indeed a good Friday.
Amen.
We are unworthy servants, Father. If you are for us, who can stand against us?
That's right.
I thank you that we were blessed with this club to host an apologetic seminar led by Andrew Smell. I just ask that we learn something new today.
Please.
Something that we can take with us. That we leave here today with new insights and takeaways and just leave here renewed, Father. I just thank you for sending your Son to die for us on the cross. He laid His life so that we could gain ours.
Come on.
Father, you are the only way, the truth, and life.
That's right.
May your name be glorified for all of eternity. In the name of Jesus I pray, amen.
Amen. Awesome. Come on, bro.
Well, guys, the time has come. And I hope that everybody here has some questions ready to go. But first of all, we want to give a big round of applause to the Pathfinders.
Let's go,
Representing the Pathfinders is none other than the President, Erica.
Come on, Erica.
As you all know, I'm Erica, the president of Pathfinder. And I have the honor to introduce to you and give a brief biography of our guest speaker tonight. He serves as the lead evangelist for the Washington, D.C. International Christian Church and overseer for the Africa and Mid-Atlantic World sector of the Sold Out Discipling Movement, along with his beautiful wife of 18 years. He was born and raised in New York, and he has excelled in academics from an early age. He graduated valedictorian in high school and is a two-time academic recipient and graduate of Cornell University. He achieved a bachelor's degree in human biology and a master's degree in health administration. And despite the many health career options in the health industry, he decided to give up his great dream in medicine to be the great physician and the fight lasting spiritual change through the full-time ministry. He also earned a doctorate degree in ministry with the full scholarship from the International College of Christian Ministries, also known as ICCM. He currently serves as the president for ICCM Extension Schools in Africa and the Mid-Atlantic U.S. He specializes in the area of Christian evidences and has spoken at conferences, universities, and churches. In 2023, the Smellies, along with their beautiful children, Naomi and Isaiah, returned from missionary work from Africa after planting and establishing churches in 7 years. They have now returned to Washington, D.C. to build the headquarters and missions training center for the Mid-Atlantic U.S., while they continue to oversee the work on the motherland of Africa for the Sold Out movement of churches.
coming out on a Good Friday. You know, very often this is a time when I guess you can say a lot of people go to church. But the question is why? Why are we here? And do we have a real conviction about why we're doing what we're doing? You know, I think for me, a scripture, if you guys have ever studied the Bible, a scripture that really comes to mind is in 1 Peter chapter 3. Last time we were here, we actually did a whole seminar on evidence for the Bible. And so if you were here last time, you probably remember that and how we examine the Bible, just the medical evidence, the scientific evidence, all these different aspects of it. But I think this scripture in 1 Peter chapter 3 really, it comes to mind when it comes to this time of year. Because sadly, most people, they come out to church, or they want to learn more about God at Christmas when Jesus is a baby. And they come out at Easter when apparently he just died and resurrected and then ascended. So that's how they like to know about Jesus. You know, when he was born and when he died, resurrected. But the rest of the year, most people actually don't really want to know him. And for those of us who claim to be Christians, we have to have deep convictions about this. And in 1 Peter chapter 3, take a look what the Bible says here. And then we'll jump into our presentation tonight. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, it says, "But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord." Amen. Now, this is powerful because I think many people call themselves Christians, and they like the Savior part, but they don't like the Lord part. Right? They want Jesus to save them. They want to be able to get to heaven, but they don't actually want to make him the Lord of their lives. And that's not what the Bible says. It says here, in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Not just in your actions, but in your heart. It says here, sometimes be prepared. No. That's not what it says. Right? What does it say? Always. It says always be prepared to give an answer to who? To everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope you have. Come on, bro. And we have a hope in Christ. Amen? Amen. If we don't, and we're going to see from tonight, if we don't really understand the resurrection and why Jesus rose from the dead, then it's just some philosophy. You get what I'm saying here? It says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. I think sadly, Christianity has had a bad name because of people don't know how to present it in a good way. They don't know how to do it in a mature way without coming across disrespectful or arrogant. You can be confident without being disrespectful. You can be convinced of the truth without being just mean. And I think I've seen some people that sadly, in an effort to try to proclaim Christianity, have become just rude. And so it says here, do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. You know, very often today, people have an issue with us. If you claim to be a Christian, the world has an issue with you. Because the quote that our dear friend here, Michael Saber, just read, it's a pretty exclusive quote. When Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he doesn't say, I am a way. He says, I am the way. I am the truth, and I am the life. That's a pretty exclusive statement right there. Right? Like 2 plus 2 equals 4. There's no other different variations of that. Whatever people want to believe in. So tonight, as we jump on in, the goal of this is kind of me being a quote unquote spiritual lawyer presenting evidence to you. Amen. And you're the jury. All right. So you get to decide at the end of my presentation whether there's enough reasonable evidence to conclude that Jesus is not just a Savior, but truly needs to be Lord in our lives. Amen? And so the theme tonight, let me just turn this down here so you guys can see it. I believe this one. Yep. Let's see if this one. There it is. That's good, bro. Is that better for you? Yeah. Amen. So the title tonight, of course, The Case for Jesus as the Son of God. Let's jump on in together. All right, so first we're going to kind of jump on in here with the agenda. And so I believe, bro, I just want to make sure this is plugged in well. Josh, where are you? Joshua Ajayi? Oh, did he just step out? Okay, I just want to make sure he is good to go here so that his thing doesn't move. All right, so our agenda tonight is we're going to cover a couple different areas. Number one, did Jesus claim to be the Son of God or just a good teacher or a prophet? This is very important, right? Because if he's just a good teacher or just a prophet, then he's not really divine, right? means he didn't really raise from the dead. Is the eyewitness testimony of his resurrection reliable? Right? Because none of us were there. I don't believe so. Okay? And so the question is, was the eyewitness testimony reliable so that we can trust it? Right? And we're going to take a look at, again, some reliability of biblical evidence. Again, we talked about this earlier this month, but we're going to examine this together. And then we're going to really see this resurrection. Was it just like, a perceived like thing? Maybe this was just like some cool hallucination, or was this really resurrecting from the dead? Right? Like, and I think it's powerful that it talks about, Jesus could have like died and then resurrected maybe a day later, but it was 3 days later. So there was no question here. Today when someone dies, it's like beep, right? The heart is dead, but then you kind of revive them, right? And what's interesting about that is that after a certain period of time, you can't revive them anymore. It's done. They're brain dead, their heart's dead. They're not coming back no matter how much you try to jolt them back to life, right? And so, very important there. And then, are there neutral parties, quote unquote, non-Christians, who can verify the evidence? Because we don't want to be biased here. I don't want to just give you what the Christian perspective is. I want to give you, okay, what do the non-Christians have to say? What do the neutral parties have to say? I think it's very important to have a balanced argument if you're going to present something to people, right? Okay. By the way, when Josh comes back, this is his laptop, so I just want to make sure it doesn't run out of juice here, but amen. It's plugged in. Okay. Good. Amen. Just want to make sure we're good to go there. All right. Moving forward. Let's examine some minimal facts of which most skeptics are united about. Number one, Jesus of Nazareth was a historical figure and was killed by crucifixion. Okay? That's the first thing. This guy, Jesus of Nazareth, he really existed. It wasn't just folklore. It wasn't just legend. This guy really existed and was really killed. Even the skeptics have confirmed all that. Number two, Jesus' disciples believed that he arose and appeared to them. That's why they went to their deaths. And let me tell you, they went to some really nasty deaths, believing that he rose and appeared to them, right? People can believe different things, but you don't get crucified. You don't get axed in half. You don't get sawed in half. Literally for a lie. You know what I mean? Like you could say, oh yeah, he did it, but then when the people are coming to kill you and like torture you, you're like, okay, I was just joking. Right. You know what I'm saying right there, right? Number three, the conversion of a church persecutor, Paul of Tarsus. This guy really got converted, and this was a guy, a very influential Pharisee that decided to believe in Jesus, and it looked like it just turned off, like I said. But I can keep it going.
Come on, bro.
No, I did warn it. Did I not warn it? I did it twice. I just wanted to confirm right there. Well, let's see if it's actually plugged on in. And so, as we hold on there, thank you, my brother. Amen. Let's give it up for the AV team. Let me continue from my notes, amen. It's always good to be ready. It's always good to be ready. So, but it's important to have those facts down because, like I said, you have to have a balanced perspective when you deal with people. And so, let me go ahead and just get to mine here. And I will, while they're working on that, go to my slides. Hey, this is my slide. Hey, you can't see it. It's not as nice for you. But I'm going to give it a little time here. So, the conversion of a church persecutor and then the conversion of a skeptic, James, Jesus' half-brother. Now, unlike what Catholics like to say, Mary actually did have more children. I know. She wasn't always a virgin. I know. Well done, AVT. Amen. You see? Without a hitch, we just go, keep it smooth. Well done. And so, bro, what kind of laptop is this? It's an Acer. Okay, bro. I'm super grateful. I'm very grateful for your laptop. This is awesome. Okay. And so what's powerful here is that you have the conversion of James, who was a skeptic, Jesus' half-brother. And we're going to see what he has to say. And then finally, Jesus' tomb is actually empty. It really is. And if you go to the traditional spot today, guess what? It's still empty. But the graves of Confucius, Muhammad, and all these other different guys, they're still there. And so we're going to see why that matters. So these are just the minimal facts that the skeptics agree on. This is true, right? Okay. So now we're going to examine this whole concept of Jesus being a legend or not. A lot of people think, maybe this Jesus guy is just a legend. What does it mean by a legend? Well, he really existed, but a lot of the facts have been exaggerated about him. Do you get what I'm saying? Right. So this is where some people go. Like, okay, we believe you, Jesus of Nazareth existed, but, I think you guys have exaggerated some stuff. And now it's become this cool legend that everyone follows. Billions of people do, right? Okay, well, let's examine that here. There are actually thousands of extra biblical manuscripts. What does extra biblical mean? Outside of the Bible, okay? Biblical manuscripts that prove Jesus to be a historical figure. Therefore, he's not a legend, right? And it proves that it's just beyond what he actually said, but also what he did. And so, there's more actual historical evidence for Jesus than Napoleon. There's more evidence for Jesus than Julius Caesar. You can study this out for yourself, right? I mean, everyone watches. I'm not sure if you guys actually watched that movie on Napoleon. I didn't. I heard it was a bit shady. I don't know. I didn't see it. But then you got to ask yourself, that's why these guys can take poetic license with these movies. Because, they don't really have a lot of evidence, so they kind of fill in a lot of stuff to make people go to the movies and spend their $15, $20. And so we're going to see here that Jesus is a historical figure, not a myth, and definitely not a legend either. What's powerful here is that Otto Betts, he's a very key scholar. He says, no serious scholar has ventured to claim that Jesus was a non-historical character.
Wow.
So these are people, non-Christians, have basically said, listen, Jesus was real. What he claimed could be backed up. And so he wasn't just some myth or something that people dreamed up, right? Okay, let's continue. So now, as we examine this, what are the evidence we're going to look at? Like, how do we figure this out, right? How do we prove that Jesus is God? What kind of evidence do we have to really look at? Well, first of all, we have eyewitness testimonies in the line of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So are these gospels, are they reliable or are they biased? We got to examine this, right? Again, I try to be very straightforward and not try to be biased in when I present things. Then we're also going to look at supporting testimonies of these eyewitness testimonies. Looking at Jewish and Roman historians. What do they have to say? And how do they now support what the eyewitness testimonies have to say? Right? Confirming many details about evidences in the Bible. And these guys are not Christians. This is the key right here. Okay? Then, the material evidence, the archaeological evidence. There is archaeological evidence referring to events in the Bible talking about Jesus, talking about Pilate, talking about all the stuff surrounding the crucifixion. That's pretty awesome right there, right? And so this is the kind of evidence we're going to look at here, right? Again, we can't zoom back in time and say, okay, what happened, right? But this is the way we're going to be able to take a look and say, is there enough reasonable evidence to conclude that Jesus truly is Lord? All right, so now let's continue. Son of God or just a good prophet, right? It's this whole concept of, is he a liar? Is Jesus a liar? Is he a lunatic? Or is he really Lord? Right? This is what we're going to examine here. You guys still with me? Yeah. All right, here we go. So, the name that stirs controversy. That's why people stop liking it. They don't really like to talk about Jesus anymore. They try to say, let's just go to church. But it's not just about going to church. The question is, are you a disciple of Jesus? Not a disciple of Shaolin Kung Fu. Not a disciple of Pastor so-and-so and so. Are you a student and follower of Jesus? Are you a Christian like Christ?
Right. Come on, bro.
Because otherwise, you're just being religious. You're not actually being righteous. Okay. And so, Jesus, why is it that Jesus Christ, more than the name of any other religious leader, causes irritation in some people? Right? You talk about Jesus, all of a sudden they're like, hold on, right? Why is that? Because he claimed to be God. to rise from the dead and be the only way to heaven. Right? Buddha just talked about having an eightfold path. Right? Confucius and these guys, they were just like, hey, this is a cool philosophy. If you want to jump on, jump on. If you don't, hey, do your thing. Right? Jesus wasn't like that. He said, I am the way. Right? Not a way. Okay. The question for us here today is, who do you personally say Jesus is? As you come in here today, is he a historical figure to you that some zealous people like to follow? Is he someone that, you go to church because your family goes to church, but it doesn't really change your life. And you hope that if you have some belief in him, that maybe you'll make it to heaven. Or have you really made Jesus not just your Savior, but really your Lord? And you're living daily with that focus and with that heart. And so you got to figure out for yourself, because there's only one standard of Christianity. And that's very important. You can't be, it's kind of like marriage. Either you're married and you're going to give your whole heart, or you're going to be an adulterer. And I think sometimes people like to flirt with Christianity. Maybe like Jesus is like, he's not your master, he's your mistress. You kind of check him out once in a while, because it's a fun thing to do. But he's not really your master. In the same way, that's how people, sadly, that's why you wonder why even marriages are the way they are today. People don't really have deep convictions about what marriage is. But that's a whole nother discussion. I'm gratefully married to my queen for 18 years, so I'm fired up. Well, just the other day, I was having a conversation with a friend, and he was like, yeah, I'm a good person. And I said, well, that's an interesting comment. Like, what is your definition of good? And where does your definition of good come from? And then all of a sudden, you go, I don't steal from people. I don't, I'm not a rapist. And I'm like, okay. Well, there's a lot of people that could say that, per se. But there's also people that, in regards to, they may lie. Lying can actually send you to hell, too. Really? Cheating? Yeah, that too. Right? And so I think sometimes people have this viewpoint like only rapists and murderers go to hell. That's not the case. Right? And so the question is, do all good ways lead to heaven? Where does good come from? Does good come from our society? Because, 150 years ago, I wouldn't be considered a human being. So based on the laws of the land, I would not be valued as a human being. I could be somebody's property. So, is good dependent upon the laws of the land? Is good dependent upon your particular viewpoint and your family? What if your family decides to change their viewpoints? You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, this is huge, because ultimately, we're going to see that Jesus is the answer to sin and our lack of self-control. Right? He's the answer to our ignorance and our lack of righteousness. And so, what do we see here in John 14? We saw it earlier today when it was quoted. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So, Jesus is that bridge to be with the Father. Ultimately, we can't make it to heaven by ourselves. Because we have to be perfect. Anyone here perfect? No. Okay, so everybody here needs a bridge, right, to be able to get to God, right? And so that's what's powerful here, because ultimately He's the only way. It goes on here in Acts 4:12. The Apostle Luke goes on to share that salvation is found in what? No one. These are exclusive statements right here. For there is no other name, referring to Jesus, under heaven given to men by which we must be saved. And I think sometimes there's this whole viewpoint of, I guess I kind of call it a Barney Christianity. Yeah, right? The whole, I love you, you love me, right? Happy family, right? And so I think that's a very false and misleading viewpoint. Because the Bible doesn't say that Christianity is like Barney. You can't say I'm a Christian and also believe that Buddhists and Muslims and and all that other stuff, and they're right too. That doesn't mean you don't respect their viewpoint, but you can't agree with them too. In the same way, you can't say that all quote-unquote denominations are correct. Because we have, 1,200 different Christian quote-unquote denominations saying that this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. So if we don't go back to this, then we really are also saying that everyone, even who calls themselves a Christian, is okay too. We're going to examine that even in deeper detail, but maybe for another time. But this is deep, guys. Because a lot of people claim to follow Jesus. And so, what do we see here? What does Jesus have to say about himself? Well, this is powerful. Jesus actually claimed to be God. In John 10, verse 30, because I think sometimes people try to push divine claim. They say that we try to push divine claims on Jesus. No. Jesus stated this. In John 10, verse 30, he said, I and the Father are one. Okay, hold on a second. I don't think any of us would say, you and God are one. No. No. He says, I and the Father are one. Again, the Jews picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus said to them, I have shown you many great miracles from the Father. For which do you stone me? We are not stoning you for any of these, replied the Jews, but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God. Which means that everyone listening to him thought, okay, this guy is claiming to be God. Right. You get what I'm saying here? There was no doubt. There was no hey, I'm a cool guy. Me and God are cool. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm really God, but no. Jesus is saying he is God. Yep. And everyone else thought that. Okay. Just to be clear about what Jesus claimed, right? If you go on here, like I mentioned, he claimed that he and the Father were one. He also claimed in John 8:46 that he was sinless. Whoa, bold statements, right? He claimed to forgive the sins of all in Luke 5:21. He claimed to save us from sin and death through his resurrection, John 11:25. And he claimed to come from heaven, John 6:38. Oh, and by the way, he claimed to have the same honor as God and the same power of judgment. These are divine claims. This is not, remember, the question here is that, is he just some good prophet or truly God in the flesh? A prophet does not make these claims. But yet, Jesus made these claims. Very important to have deep conviction about.
Come on, bro. Yeah.
And so, what's powerful here is that Jesus claimed to be God, the great I am. He said it in so many ways, and then he even made sure the Jews got it too. Because in Mark 14, it says, again, the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Whoa. John 8:58. Very truly I tell you, Jesus answered, before Abraham was born, I am. Woo. He's specifically saying this on purpose. Just so that the Jews understand, hold on a second here. Hold on. You're saying the same, using the same term that God himself revealed to Moses. The name God used to name himself in Exodus 3:14. The I am. Oh, snap. See, he wasn't just saying. He knew. He knew what the scripture said. He knew how God was defined. And this is powerful. And so, for people to say that Jesus is just a good moral person, they definitely have not heard what he said. They're ignorant about what he said. And so, the Pharisees were right in a lot of ways. They're like, either he's Lord or he's a demon, right? Because you can't be in between. You can't be this good prophet, right? Okay, very clear that no other religious leaders dared to repeat those kind of claims. Buddha, Confucius, Muhammad, and other religious founders performed no miracles. No miracles, and by the way, didn't rise from the dead either. Right? And it's sad, but the truth is, Muhammad killed many Jews in Medina. That's a historical fact. He was a murderer. But they don't like to talk about that one. Jesus offered his many miracles and his resurrection as evidence for his divinity. And so, you know, for folks that, I have many different folks that I talk to from different religious areas and different aspects of religion. And what's interesting about it is that I like to study out different aspects of religion. Like I have a Quran. I study out the Hindu Vedas and Bhagavad Gita, all these different things. Because I feel like we need to know these things in order to be able to help people. And so, for example, the Quran actually talks about Jesus. If you ever study out the Quran, and you should get an English translation, of course. Of course, they're going to say, well, it should be in Arabic. I'm like, okay, do you speak Arabic? No. So then how do you read it? So, but amen. It's very clear if you sit down and actually read through the Quran, an English translation, written by people who are Muslim and have translated from the Arabic into English. Take a look at this. One of the quotes here in the surahs, it says, he, referring to Jesus, said, I am indeed a servant of God. He has given me revelations and made me a prophet. So this is why the Muslims like to say that Jesus is a prophet. He has made me blessed wheresoever I be. He has enjoined me on prayer and charity as long as I live. He has made me kind to my mother and not overbearing or miserable. Okay. This is what the Quran has to say, right? It says that Jesus is a prophet. So what does this imply? Because if the Quran is saying that Jesus is a prophet, that means that people who are followers of Islam acknowledge that Jesus lived. Right? What are the implications here? Let's finish the surah. It says, so peace is on me the day I was born, the day I die, and the day that I shall be raised up to life again. This is Surah chapter 19. The Quran talks about the resurrection of Jesus. Such was Jesus, the son of Mary. It was a statement of truth about which they vainly dispute. It is not befitting to the majesty of Allah that he should beget a son. Glory be to him. When he determines a matter, he only says to it, be, and it is. Hold on a second here. You mean the Quran talks about Jesus and talks about his resurrection? The sad thing is that there is a contradiction in the Quran in Surah chapter 4 talking about the opposite of it. So we can have another discussion on that. But the Quran speaks of the resurrection. You should ask your friends. Say, can we turn to Surah chapter 19? No, I'm giving it to you. I'm not just saying, I'm giving you the verse. Wow. Turn to Surah chapter 19. Let's read verse 30 to 35. How do you explain this? They cannot. So what are the implications of all this? Well, is Jesus just a good prophet, right? Well, no, he can't just be a good prophet. Why? Because he claimed to be the Son of God. Yeah. God in the flesh. Are you with me here? So as a result, he's either a liar, he's a lunatic, right? Or he's really Lord. And so by definition, a good prophet can't be a liar or a lunatic. Because you're saying he's a good prophet. So you can't be a liar and claim to be a good, and you can't be a lunatic and be a prophet, right? So he has to be Lord. Those are the only options we have here, right? Remember too, how could Muhammad be greater than Jesus if Muhammad never claimed to be able to rise from the dead? It doesn't make sense, right? Okay, now this again, like we could do a whole semester on examining this stuff. But I'm just trying to give you a little breakdown here to help you understand. So, by the way, we're recording this, so if you want to, you could always take a look at the recording afterwards. Okay? But you have to understand the whole Lord, liar, lunatic argument. Right? Because Jesus claimed to be God. The scriptures are clear. So we have two choices. Either his claims were false, right? And he knew his claims were false. And therefore he deliberately misrepresented himself and therefore was a liar. Right? Therefore, he was a hypocrite, he was demonically influenced, and he died on a cross as a fool. Who does that? When do you finally say, okay, guys, I was just joking here, right? You don't have to, like, crucify me, right? So that's the whole liar aspect, right? Or his claims are false, and he didn't know his claims were false. He was mentally just out of his mind. He was sincerely deluded. He was a lunatic with delusions of grandeur. These are the options. Right? Right? And yet, why was he like stumping the Pharisees, the best Pharisees around him? How can a lunatic do that? I mean, these were the PhDs of the day. Right? And he was stumping them time and time again. Right? And so that's the choice. Either his claims are false or his claims are true. Right? And if the claims are true, he is Lord, and then now we have some choices to make. We have to, either we're going to accept the truth or we're going to reject the truth. But you can't say you didn't know. You can't say you didn't know. Okay, so is Jesus really the Son of God? Well, the sign that confirms that Jesus is the Son of God is his resurrection, of course, from the dead. Because no one, not even prophets, right, have done this. And so, interesting, in Matthew chapter 16, it says, a wicked and adulterous generation looks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah. Well, what's the sign of Jonah? Everyone thought that he was what? Dead in the fish. Right? And then, boom, days later, there he is. That was the sign of Jonah. I love how Jesus refers back to the Old Testament, right? Again, confirming the divinity of the Old Testament. Right? Then, 1 Corinthians 15:14, and if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. Which means that if we don't really have deep conviction about the resurrection, and we just say, okay, I just want to go to church and sing some nice songs, wear a cross around my neck, but I don't really have deep conviction about the resurrection. If you don't have deep conviction about the resurrection, then you're wasting your time. We've got to have deep conviction about this. Otherwise, our faith really isn't complete. And so, the resurrection really is everything. It's the quintessential proof that Jesus is God. It's the foundation of Christianity. That's why this time is so important. Not just to sing holy, 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 or have like Easter egg hunts, which have nothing to do with Jesus. Right? But really understanding, wow, why do I believe what I believe? And how does that impact those around me? It says here in 1 Corinthians 15:17 and 19, if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile. You are still in your sins. If only for this life we have hope in Christ, we are to be pitied more than all men. Why have you been denying yourself this entire time? Why have you been putting yourself through all this burdensome life of being a Christian? I don't think it's a burdensome life. I think living for the truth is actually the greatest example of self-control. Any fool can give in to their sinful impulses. Any fool can lie, cheat, sleep around, do all that stuff. It doesn't take wisdom to do those things. A fool can do it. It takes strength to be pure. It takes strength to be self-controlled. It takes strength to control those sinful impulses. So, all right. So we looked at the whole Son of God or, right, just a good prophet. Okay, let's continue with the agenda items we talked about. Now we're going to look at some eyewitness testimony and martyrdom.
Nice.
Now, this is a famous picture here of how they used to kill Christians in the Colosseum in Rome. And as you can see here, you have the Christians huddled together. And yes, they did go after them with lions. And this is all historical. They also put them on stakes and lit them on fire, as you can see here. Do you get eaten by lions for a lie?
Come on, bro.
You see these kids here? That could have been Naomi.
Come on.
Set on fire for a lie? When do you stop and say, okay, hey, I was just kidding? And so, eyewitness testimony and martyrdom, family, right? Is this what we're talking about, just a bunch of stories? It's not. Right? What does the Bible say? 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 16. We did not follow cleverly invented stories. Because I think that's what people are trying to say. You guys are just making stuff up. So he's like, no. We did not follow cleverly invented stories when we told you about the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. Right? Why would people who ran when Jesus was arrested, mind you, right? Let's call it what it is. Jesus' 12, well, the 11, because Judas went off and did what he did, right? They all went. Jesus was arrested. What did they do? They ran. Mark ran he lost his clothes. He ran so fast. Right? You go study it out. He should have lost his clothes. He was scared. And all of a sudden, these guys go from cowards to commandos. All of a sudden, they go from cowards to men who literally went to their deaths in gruesome ways. Right? Why would they preach to their deaths that he had resurrected? It doesn't make sense. Right? And so, some people even try to say, well, maybe it was some mass hallucination. Mass hallucination. Give me a break. 1 Corinthians 15, it says, after that he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers at the same time. A mass hallucination of 500 people? Right? This wasn't some mass hallucination. Again, it doesn't make sense. Right? Let's consider what these guys went through. Fox's Book of Martyrs. Let's see. James, beheaded. Right? Cuts your head off. That's intense right there. Right? The first martyr of the apostles, Acts 12. Peter, executed by crucifixion. At his own request, head down. He didn't feel worthy to be crucified the same way Jesus did. He said, crucify me upside down. Man, that even hits me now. You know? My namesake, Andrew, crucified at Petraeus and Achaia. A later tradition describes him as being crucified in a spread eagle position. John, boiled in oil. Can you imagine that? Right? Before dying a natural death. We know that God's Spirit worked through him to speak right revelation. Can you imagine being boiled in oil first? But he lived a natural death. He died a natural death, rather, at Ephesus around 98 to 100 AD. He survived that. Can you imagine? That's a form of torture, right? Bartholomew, traditionally, he met his death by being flayed or skinned alive, right? Like, when do you say, okay, enough already? Right? But if you're like, dude, I'm going to heaven. I know I'm tortured right now. I'm getting tortured right now. But you know what? I am not going to deny the truth.
Come on, bro.
What you're dealing with me right now is for a short moment. I have eternity to look forward to. Wow. Skinned alive, then beheaded. And this is intense, guys. In what is now India. Matthias, axed to death. This is Fox's Book of Martyrs. You can go look it up. Study it out yourself. Right? Thomas, speared to death. Can you imagine just tying you up and just throwing spears at you? James the Less, martyred in Egypt. Jude, shot with arrows in Persia. Simon the Zealot, killed in Persia. Paul, beheaded in Rome. Right? And again, guys, con men may lie for money, but they won't die for a lie. And in gruesome ways at that. And so, now we have to examine some eyewitness testimonies for Jesus. Again, just trying to put the facts before you, right? The four Gospels, remember we talked about that? Yep. And we want to see the supporting testimonies to that as well. And so why should we believe any of the Gospels in the Bible? Well, of course, last time we got together, we talked about the Bible, and we kind of laid all this out. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to give you just a quick taste of why we can rely on biblical evidence, right? There's a number of characteristics of the gospel that make them more reliable. They report the uglier side of the story, right? For example, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, right? And again, I'm not going to go into all the facts I went into last time we got together. If you want to, you can go back and go look at that video. But what I want to give you kind of another perspective of it. And the fact that the Gospels, it wasn't like some, I forget the word for it, but they kind of smooth it out to make it look good, right? No, they gave you the real facts, the real reporting, right? There was no sugarcoating, exactly, right? And so, imagine you wanted to start a new made-up religion, okay? right? Would you now portray an important figure as a wimp? You wouldn't do that. You would do everything you can to, like, prop him up and make him look powerful, right? And so Peter, who's supposed to be the leader of the 12, this dude is like denying Jesus 3 times, running with keeping his distance. Is this the way you want him? The guy who's going to go preach in Acts chapter 2? This is the standard of Christianity. Like, yeah, that's the truth. That's who he was, right? Right? Little girls, he lied to little girls, got shook by little girls coming like, aren't you with him? Right? That was Peter. Grown man, got shook by some young kids. That's why I appreciate the Bible. It just gives you the raw, real truth, right? They also include weaker yet truthful testimonies. What do I mean by that? Well, at that time, women's testimony was considered worthless by Jews. In ancient Jewish society, women were not valued, yet Jesus valued the Samaritan woman. He valued the women that came. The women, the Bible actually reports that women were the first people to come at that resurrection.
Amen. That's right.
Do you see how the Bible just lifted and elevated women? Right? And so, like I said here, first people to discover the empty tomb, all women. Right? That's the Bible. That's God. And so, again, if you wanted to start a new made-up religion, you would want men to discover the empty tomb. Maybe that would give them more credibility, especially in ancient Jewish society. But that's not what they did. That's not the truth. You get what I'm saying here? And so, why else do we believe? Because the accounts are reliable, Memories fade, people who witnessed the event die, and the 4 Gospels were written very early after Jesus' death and resurrection. Mark around 70, Matthew around 80, Luke around 80, and John around 90 AD, right? And so, what's powerful here is that the Gospels are all written after Paul's letters, right? And Paul's conversion occurred around 32 to 35 AD. His first meeting with the apostles in Jerusalem occurred around 35 to 38. His ministry probably began around 40s AD. So Paul's letter probably were written in the 50s AD, 20 years after Jesus' death. You get what I'm saying here? And so let's examine this. All right, let's get deep. I'm going for meat and potatoes. I'm trying to break it. I'm trying to convince you. Okay, let's talk about the importance of all this. Right. So let's talk about the importance of the time of writing. Jesus' death, resurrection, call it 30, 33 AD, traditional dates. Mark's gospel, right? We won't even go into like Paul and all his writings. We're just going to keep it with the gospels, right? Okay. Jesus' death and resurrection, Mark's gospel, that's 40 years. Only 40 years. I'm 44, right? There are still people alive in 70 AD who were alive in 30 to 33 AD. That's true. Right? So if Mark was lying, he would be corrected for sure. People are like, hold on, young buck. Hold on, young buck. That's not what happened. Right? What if someone came to you and said, okay, the Gulf War, remember Saddam Hussein? He tried to go into Kuwait, and he took over Kuwait, and then the Gulf War happened? Yeah, that didn't actually happen. Saddam Hussein never existed. The Gulf War never happened. That was in the 90s. That was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You get what I'm saying here? And so, but that's the thing. People are like, whoa, hold on a second. Right? You wouldn't accept that. In the same way, no one would accept that either. Right? Okay. Now, this is powerful. Let's compare the Bible to Julius Caesar.
Let's do it.
Jesus died, call it 30 AD. Caesar died 44 BC. Mark was written 70 AD. There's the 40 years, right? Good. Now, you have 100 years between Tacitus, a Roman historian, starts talking about Julius Caesar. That's 100 years. More than twice the amount of time before a Roman historian tells us about Julius Caesar. But yet people believe that Julius Caesar existed more than they believe that Jesus existed.
Whoa. Nuts.
Earliest surviving copy of Mark, 350 AD. Earliest surviving copy of Tacitus, 950 AD. Wow. 600 years later. But everyone believes Julius Caesar existed and all the stuff that he did. Really? Are you sure? People get their PhDs in this stuff. Just breaking it down. Oh, let's look at another guy. Let's look at Alexander the Great. Again, Jesus died, we understand, 30. Mark talks about it, 70, 40 years. Alexander the Great, 323 BC. They write movies about this guy. Alexander. Right? Okay. Plutarch, right? The great historian talks about him. What? 400 years later? Plutarch wasn't around, but he's writing about him 400 years later. Earliest surviving copy of Plutarch, again, 950 AD. But y'all go to school to learn about these people. Why did you go to school to learn about Jesus?
All right, come on, Andrew.
There's more evidence for Jesus than these dudes.
All right, come on, bro.
Do you see? See, if you actually break it on down and take a look at it, the evidence is clear.
It is.
People choose not to believe.
Yeah.
They choose not to accept the truth. It's their choice, right? And so, why do we believe the Bible? Because it's reliable. We have documented proof that the Bible is more reliable than historical documents on kings. Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Bible records that have happened a shorter period of time because we know memory fades. And the Bible also preserves the record for posterity better. Because if you lose the writing, the record won't get passed down. The Bible, we studied out last time, is the most reliable ancient document we have today.
That's right.
Period. But yet you go to and spend thousands of dollars to go to universities to learn stuff that you don't even know if it's accurate or not. You got whole libraries full of books about this stuff. Guys. All right. Well, again, let's just have some fun here. Let's suppose that you were to invent Christianity as a new religion. You know, devil's advocate again. Okay? From your own fantasy. Right? Who would you want as writers of the Gospels? Right? You would probably want the most prominent disciples of Jesus to write the Gospels. Right? Such as a Peter or maybe even a Thomas, right? Right? And so what's interesting is that what do you see in reality? Right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? Okay, well, Matthew, he was one of Jesus' disciples who was a tax collector. A traitor to Jews. Why have him write one of the Gospels? Serious? This is the dude you want to write the Gospel? Oh, man. Okay. Mark, he was a follower of Peter. He came after. He's not even an apostle of Jesus. Hold on a second here. Luke, he was a follower of Paul. He's not even a Jew. He was a Greek. John, one of Jesus' disciples, the youngest, most inexperienced disciple of Jesus. Why did these guys write the Gospels? Okay. Well, again, if you wanted to make a fake religion, you may want to make it seem authentic by having prominent disciples like Peter or maybe even Thomas to write the Gospels. Now, funny enough, there are actually Gospels that are called the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Peter. But thankfully, these books were never accepted as part of the biblical canon. You want to find out why? Okay, I'll show you why. You still with me? The Gospel of Thomas, supposedly, not the Gospel, written in 150 AD. That's double the amount of time. And the Ezra, right? Okay, good. Now, if you have, obviously, a later date means it's less reliable, obviously. Now, the Gospel of Thomas, quote unquote, is loved by these Gnostics. They love that secret teaching. They think they have the secret teachings. And a verse from the Gospel of Thomas, you can go study this out. Simon Peter said to them, "Make Mary leave us, for females don't deserve life." That sounds like some Jewish bigot talking, misogynist talking from that time. You get what I'm saying? Okay. That's not divine. Another quote, Jesus said, "Look, I will guide her to make her male. For every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven." I'm not surprised by the stuff that's happening today. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. The same demonic stuff that was back then has resurfaced today. Why are we surprised, friends? Guys, the gospel. That's the sad thing. Because people today are saying, oh, we have a new gospel. We have a new truth. Embrace your truth. Embrace your truth. But this kind of nonsense has been happening for millennia. Why are you surprised? The problem is that we stop holding to the truth and we get tolerant with this nonsense. All right. What about the Gospel of Peter? Well, he wrote also 120 AD. Again, and this wasn't Peter because there's someone acting like they're Peter. Thomas, of the Gospel of Thomas, someone acting like they're Thomas, and of course there's fake stuff. More verses from this quote-unquote gospel. This is interesting. They saw 3 men come out of the tomb, 2 of them sustaining the other one, and a cross following after them. That might be interesting.
And then they woke up, bro.
Right? So the cross was somehow following after them. The head of the 2 they saw had heads that reached up to heaven. That's a serious forehead right there. But the head of him that was led by them went beyond heaven. Guys, this is you can go look it up. This is the kind of nonsense we're talking about here. It's not even grammatically accurate. Right? And so the issue of the resurrected Jesus was huge, guys. Right? Even back then, people were trying to get like some kind of notoriety from this. Let's make our own gospel. Maybe we can have people follow us too. All right. Well, again, we're just trying to break this on down. Why believe, right? Again, what if you were to, invent Christianity as a new religion from your own fantasy? Would you portray Jesus' disciples? How would you portray them as the founders of this new Christian faith? Right? You want to now start this religion. Right? You want them to be what? Brave, pure, friendly, like saints. That's what you want. Right? Right? All the usual good qualities, right? I mean, who would follow bad examples in life? But yet, it's good to have bad examples to show you what is good. Right? But what do you see in reality, right? Well, let's keep looking. How are the disciples described in the Bible? Bickering and backstabbing. Matthew 20:21. What is it you want, he asked. She said, grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. Man, these guys were like, oh, I want to be next Jesus. Oh, man. These are the 12? Good night. I can only imagine how Jesus felt sometimes looking at these dudes. These are the ones, Father. But the truth of it is that he did pick them. And I think he picked them precisely for that purpose. That I'm going to use the weak to shame the strong. Are you with me right there? And so, how are these guys described? They're bickering, they're backstabbing, they're cowards. Everyone ran away. I mean, not even one dude said, all right, Jesus, I got you back. Right? Peter, the leader, the best he could do was follow at a distance. Right? He still denied him 3 times. Right? And of course, unbelieving like Thomas. And so this is huge right here. Right? I mean, really, this guy did not believe. And so, why were the disciples described in such a bad light? Because it's the truth. And the naked truth is not always pretty and clean. The truth cannot be hidden, and there are even prophecies to confirm it. Right? Again, just giving you guys some more evidence here. Over 400 messianic prophecies. Jesus fulfilled them all. The probability of only 8 prophecies being fulfilled is 1 times 10 to the 17th power. And we have 400 messianic prophecies. Like, when do you finally say, okay, I get it? I get it. Right? Shall we look at a few of them? Born of a virgin. Born in Bethlehem. Right? Sold for 30 pieces of silver. Okay, Judas, listen, I know you're going to sell me out. But it's got to be 30 pieces. It can't be like 20. It's got to be 30. You sure? You sure you got it? I mean, imagine at the Last Supper, we're like, all right, count them for me real quick. Just make sure. Just want to make sure. The prophecy has got to be right. Right? Wounded and bruised. But here's another one. Bones not broken. I love this one. Okay, guys, I'm on the cross. I know I can't really talk to you that much because it's hard to breathe, but you can't, like, break my legs like you do those guys. If you break my legs, it breaks the prophecy. So can you look out for me real quick? Please, can you do that for me? Guys, can you imagine? Right? Bones not broken. Even though both next to him, their bones were broken. And it was a common practice. That one is always convicting to me. You can't control that one, right? And of course, the resurrection. Guys, 400 prophecies fulfilled. Right? All right. Now let's get into the resurrection. I told you I'm just breaking it down for you. Stating my case for you. You're the jury. You're the jury. Right? I'm just putting the facts before you. All right. The resurrection. Right? Here's the classic,
Oh, dear.
I feel like, now of course, this is the classic pictures, Judeo-Christian kind of viewpoint here. But what's interesting of these, Renaissance pictures, amen, of course, these guys weren't Anglo-Saxon, they were Middle Eastern, number one. Number two, I look at this and I'm like, hold on a second. I think Jesus is like, dude, you're touching my liver. Get your hand out. His fingers all up in there. You know what I mean? I'm like, and these guys are all looking like, whoa, hold on. But this is important, and it's very important to understand that Thomas is like, hold on a second here. This wasn't just my imagination. This wasn't just a hallucination. I can touch the wound. I can touch it. Put your finger here. Yo, that's intense. Right? Why else do we believe? The evidence, of course, the empty tomb. Right? And so, we have historical writing from non-Christians in the Jewish Talmud confirming Jesus' death by crucifixion on Passover. Talmud, Sanhedrin 43a. It is taught on the eve of Passover they hung Yeshu, or Jesus. We have historical writings, many letters, gospels, confirming the apostles' teachings of Jesus' resurrection, of course. And so, we can conclude that Jesus did die from non-biblical sources, that Jesus' disciples were preaching he had resurrected, and, of course, looking at that, what would have been the best way to make the apostles shut up about their preaching about Jesus? To bring them the dead body of Jesus. All they have to do was say, okay, look, guys, stop the nonsense. Here's a dead body. Boom. Stop your lies. Right? But they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. Why? Wasn't the Romans the ones that killed him and then put him in the tomb? Why couldn't they do it? It's only the most powerful empire at the time. This wasn't like a bunch of clowns that were guarding the tomb. These were Romans, soldiers, killers. All of a sudden, people are like, oh, well, I'll talk about this later. What did the Jewish leaders do instead? Well, Matthew 28, it says, when the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers, referring to the guys who were guarding the tomb, a large sum of money, telling them, you are to say his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. Now, of course, Romans, the soldiers, they took shifts. Why? Because if they fell asleep, they would be what? They would be killed. These guys were professional killers. Okay? You don't fall asleep on the job, and this was a big deal. Right? But why couldn't they do it, though? Because the tomb was empty. Right? And so, guys, after a while, you just got to be like, okay, enough already. Right? Look at some arguments against the resurrection. Number one, and this is what people actually say. He didn't really die. He just passed out. Right? Because once people, this is important. Once people are like, okay, fine, I cannot refute that. I can't refute the tomb is empty. So maybe I can now adjust the facts to hope that he somehow, after getting beaten multiple times to the point of death, scourged, right, officially, then literally speared in the heart. After being on the cross, somehow he got up. Like Matrix, from a nap. Like Neo, you know the part in Matrix when he's shot, and all of a sudden they're like, okay. By the way, that's a good movie, but the first one, not 2 and 3 get real shady real quick. So he He didn't really die. He just passed out. We know that's not true. These guys were professional executioners, right? They confirmed his death. Or maybe this one. The guards were sent to the wrong tomb. They didn't know. The GPS got them a different place. Brought them to the wrong tomb, right? We know that's not true either, because the tomb was near the cross, and Pilate knew where to send the guards. But do you see how ridiculous? It just keeps getting more and more ridiculous in order to justify their opinions. And then finally, Jesus' body was stolen. They straight up stole Jesus' body. That one doesn't make any sense either. The same dudes that ran away, all of a sudden now have the courage to go up to literally Roman soldiers. Some buff dudes with spears and swords. Beat them down. From cowards to commanders, right? Steal the body, right? And nobody knows the wiser. Come on now. Okay. The disciple Ignatius, he was a pupil of the Apostle John. And he was executed around between 98 to 117 AD or so, scholars believe. But he states he was carried in the womb, even as we are, for the usual period of time. And when he had lived among men for 30 years, he was baptized by John, really, and not in appearance. He was condemned. He was crucified in reality. This wasn't like some cool, like, graphic trick. And not in appearance, not in imagination, not in deceit. He really died, was buried, and rose from the dead. It's so important here to see what these guys had to say. All right, let's start to wrap up here. Evidence from non-Christians and neutral sources. Again, if all this other stuff hasn't convinced you yet, let's now take a look at evidence from the non-Christians. Now, again, as a quote-unquote attorney presenting my case, a testimony in a trial is strongest when the witness has nothing to gain from the outcome, right? So the Gospels are testimonies of Christians. But luckily, we have plenty of supporting evidence from non-Christian historians. And interesting thing as we study this out, these historians didn't intend to write about Jesus, right? They wrote about Jesus because of the Christian movement begun by Jesus' resurrection. And as a result, they now confirmed, right, from their testimonies. So, let's examine this. Thallus, a Samaritan-born historian, right, in AD 52, attempted to explain the darkened sky at the time of Christ's death. Right? So that confirmed that, guess what? It happened. And a Samaritan historian talked about it. Okay. Josephus, a Jewish historian, also records the crucifixion and resurrection reports. Tacitus, a Roman historian, wrote of Pilate's execution of Jesus. So now you have a Samaritan, a Jew, and a Roman historian, all historians confirming the facts of Jesus' crucifixion here. Yeah. Really interesting. Let's take a look at some more writings of ancient historians. Again, you got Josephus, Tacitus, and these are all the writings where they talk about it. Pliny, a Roman governor, right? And so we learn Roman history from the writings of these guys. Let me say that again. Yeah. People who now write about Roman history and all these different types of histories, right? They go to these guys for the confirmation of history. And these same guys also spoke of Jesus.
Wow.
What did Josephus have to say? He said, on Jesus, now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross. Okay, this is interesting. So now, again, Josephus, what does this say? He's confirming that this guy Jesus actually lived, as historical as George Washington, that Pilate lived, and also that Jesus was, okay, not a Christian, but confirms these facts. Okay. Let's take a look at what he has to say here. In his book Antiquities, book 20, chapter 9, it says, Festus was now dead, and Albinus was but upon the road, so he assembled the Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others, or some of his companions. And when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. Wow, okay. So again, more historical facts. Jesus lived, had a brother named James. Jesus was called Christ, the Messiah, by his followers. Interesting. Okay. Josephus also confirms Pilate. Antiquities, Book 18, Chapter 3. But now Pilate, the procurator of Judea, removed the army from Caesarea to Jerusalem to take their winter quarters there in order to abolish the Jewish laws. So now again, a Jewish historian agrees with the Bible. Matthew 27, they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Non-Christians confirming the Bible. Bible facts. Okay. Remember Josephus? He's the Jewish historian. Let's take a look at the Roman historian, Tacitus. He also wrote about Jesus. In his Annals, Book 15, consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name Christians had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful for every part of the world find their center. So what do you think? And it keeps breaking out again, not only here, but in Judea. Oh, this mischievous superstition. He's talking about it. Okay. Tacitus on Christians. Annals, Book 15. Accordingly, an arrest was first made of all who pleaded guilty. Then upon their information, an immense multitude was convicted, not so much of the crime of firing the city as of hatred against mankind. Mockery of every sort was added to their deaths. Covered with the skins of beasts, they were torn by dogs and perished, or nailed to crosses, or were doomed to the flames and burnt to serve as nightly illumination when daylight had expired. Remember those things we saw with the lion and the guys in there and being burnt? All confirmed from history. Roman historian talking about it, right? What I like here is a testimony of a former atheist. William Ramsey, in his book, St. Roman Citizen, he says this: I began with a mind unfavorable to it, the book of Acts. More recently, I found myself often brought into contact with the book of Acts as an authority for the topography, antiquities, and society of Asia Minor. The woman who says, I know him but does not do his commands, is a liar. We've become the very liar that people want to call Jesus to be. And the truth is not in him. But if anyone obeys his word, God's love is truly made complete in him. This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must walk as Jesus did. Period. Period. And so I think that's the challenge from today, guys. It's been great to be able to be here, great to be able to just come and lay out the evidence for you. But at the end of the day, it's on you to decide what you're going to do. Amen? And so we'll close out with that. Again, so grateful to be